Hello and welcome back to the podcast. It's Mark from Apprentice 1-1, and today I am here to talk to you about the upcoming changes to the wiring regulations. So this is BS7671, currently on the 18th edition Amendment 1, and we're due to change over to the 18th edition Amendment 2 on the 28th of March 2022. So I wanted to speak a little bit about some of the changes that we know are coming, some of the information that the IET have already shared. There is a press release and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. We'll have a look through that. And also some of your options to do with training, if you need to be taking any, and also some of the free CPD that's available to people over the next few weeks and months to make sure that you have an awareness of what is, involved with the changes in those regulations. So I am going to grab hold of myself and zoom me right down. You'll all be pleased to see, for those of you watching, because I will share this onto the Apprentice 1-1 YouTube channel, so you can go off and have a little look at all this content as well, because I appreciate while I am reading through it, it's not always as clear as it would be if you could actually watch it. So we'll start right at the beginning and we'll have a little look at the document that the IET shared on their website on Monday the 24th of January. So this has been out a while now. It's a press release on the IET website, and it basically says that the IET and BSI have published Amendment 2 2022 to the wiring regs, and it says they've signed off on the content, so it's all been agreed and signed off for now, and it updates requirements for fire safety design for buildings and a new chapter on prosumers low voltage electrical installations, and most excitingly it introduces a new requirement for arc fault detection devices. Now we know from the draft for public comment this was kind of suggested that it was going to be on most socket circuits especially. I believe that's been watered down ever so slightly, but wait to see what the actual final draft does say when we get to read it. But it says here that Amendment 2 comes into effect immediately when it's published on the 28th of March 2022, and the previous version, so Amendment 1, will be withdrawn 6 months later. So there is that intermediate window where the two will be in force at the same time if you've got a design to an early edition of the wiring regulations. The essential update will form the national standard to which all new electrical installations and additions and alterations to existing electrical installations in the UK are to comply. And the IET and BSI are now urging all electrical professionals to ensure they become familiar with the changes. So they're encouraging us to make sure we have knowledge of the changes. And we're going to speak a little bit about how you can achieve that later on in this podcast, because I know for many apprentices who are out there following this content, this could be the first time you've seen a major change in the wiring regulations. And for people like myself who've been through various amendments and updates over the years, it's nothing new, but you don't know what you don't know. So I'm going to explain a little bit about some of what you can do to upskill. It says the significant changes are that there is a new requirement for arc fault detection devices in some AC final circuits for installations in some types of higher risk residential buildings. So reading around the edges of that, I'm thinking high rise, maybe HMO. I don't think we're going to see this in full-scale domestic installations, but again, we'll wait and see. It says here there's a requirement for fire safety design of buildings to be documented where specific conditions of external influence exist, such as protected escape routes and locations with risk of fire. Methods of determining the requirement to provide overvoltage protection, so they're talking about surge protection there. There's probably going to be a removal of some of the risk assessment routes to not installing SPDs, but again, we'll wait and see. Changes to identification labels and notices, such as for consumer units, affecting how safety information is provided to the user of the electrical installation. Again, changing a few labels and probably the font sizes, and a whole new chapter on prosumers low voltage electrical installations in Part 8. This was going to be in the first iteration of the 18th edition, and it was pulled out when it went through the draft process when that document was in process, and now we're going to get to see that in this amendment, and that'll probably be the biggest increase in size to the wiring regulations due to that new part. I think we're looking at maybe 80-90 pages of extra content in the regs, so I would think the bulk of that will be in and around that section there. There's also a change into the way the scheduled inspections are going to be complete on certain certifications, so your EICs, for example, there might not be quite as much ticking to do in there, which is probably a sensible thing, to be honest. But again, we'll wait and see when that comes out. And it clearly says here, members of the committee responsible for the technical content of BS7671 JPL64 are not permitted to release any further information before the publication date. Now, this has happened before, where there's always leaks of these things and people do get their hands on early sight of the wiring regulations. I'm not one of those people. I'm in exactly the same position as everybody else, and I'll be reacting to the changes of the wiring regulations as they come out on the 28th of March, alongside all of you guys and girls, so we can look at them together and see what we think at that stage. It says here, Mark Coles, Head of Technical Regulations at the IET, has said the IET is the authority for electrical installations in the UK and ensures that the National Wiring Regulations Committee carefully considers all necessary updates to the regulations to ensure they best meet the needs of the industry. And there's some other bits and pieces further down that page. If you wish to go off and read it, I'll share a link to it in the description of this podcast, and you can go off and do so. And one of the questions I've been asking on social media this last couple of weeks or so is around if we need to actually take an official training course, if you like, to prove our competence and knowledge of this amendment too. And that's from kind of the viewpoint of, do we have to, in terms of being registered with a CPS or applying for a JB Gold Card, or is an existing 18th edition qualification satisfactory enough alongside some CPD to give yourself knowledge of what these changes are? And most people seem to be along the same chain of thought as myself, that if you already hold an 18th edition qualification, doing a relevant bit of CPD to give yourself a grasp of what's going on, and also reading the publication itself, that's the best way you're going to see the changes in it, to have a read through it, taking the changes of the on-site guide and guidance note 3, they're kind of the three biggest documents around all of this, and then you'll have a broad understanding of how this will affect your day-to-day work, and then perhaps taking a webinar or a CPD event, and I'm going to show you some of these here. And obviously, before we get into that, I'll be on the podcasts very soon after these changes are implemented. I'm sure with Neil on the electrician show, and with Sam and everybody else in the Monday Club team. Sorry, Neil and Rick on the electrician show, mustn't forget Rick. Talking about what some of these changes are and how they will affect our installations. But also, excitingly, I've got a little bit of something planned with an industry manufacturer. I'm not going to say any more than that because it's not my place to do so, but we're going to speak specifically about how these changes might affect apprentices and also wider electricians, as much as I can say on that. But there is something coming there, and that'll be later on in the year. And also over on Instagram, when these regulations drop, I'm going to do some content, maybe on some Instagram lives with some other people from the Apprentice One-to-One community, speaking about our initial reactions to what these changes mean. But there are some more regular places of CPD, shall we say, from industry CPSs and other organisations like that, and I'm going to run through some of that now. Oh, also the E5 guys have said they've got a webinar that they're dropping at the end of March or early April, somewhere around there, and that'll be well worth checking out as well, I'm sure. So that's one to look for. I'm sure it'll be on the YouTube as well after if you don't manage to make the webinar. But if we have a look on here, and obviously I'm a NAPIT member, so I get these emails come through very often of what the NAPIT content is, and they have got a webinar actually quite early on Tuesday the 1st of March, so this is probably going to be based more on what the anticipated changes are, but they're going in early on that one, and full credit to them for that, because getting that knowledge into people's minds as early as possible is fantastic. And it says it's for members to join us on their BS7671 Amendment 2 webinar, Tuesday the 1st of March at 6 p.m, and that's going to have their Chief Technical Officer Frank Bertie, their Technical Development Engineer Richard Townsend, and the Technical Events Manager Paul Chaffers. So a fantastic one to be involved with. I've got myself booked onto that already. Obviously, as a NAPIT member, if you're in the same boat as me, that's going to be one that's well worth checking out, and it's totally free, and you can do that from the comfort of your own home. And I know that NAPIT share these after the event as well, so if you can't make that 6-7 p.m. slot, you can watch it afterwards. So there's that one from the team at NAPIT. Now, I saw this on the Electrical Times today, but it does apply to the NIC. So they're delivering a series of free CPD certified events focused on Amendment 2, and it's exclusive to the NIC and Alexa contractors. Obviously that's the one brand now. The events will be timed to coincide with the release of the Second Amendment, ensuring contractors receive the right information at the right time. So it provides an overview of the update. It includes 2 live special broadcasts of the NIC's hit webinar program, The Wire, which is actually really good. And again, I'm not an NIC registered contractor, but I've had sight of some of those, and there is some really good content that the NIC put out on there. They're also going to do some face-to-face options with regional viewings of the broadcast being hosted by local assessors, and they're putting that on at 31 locations around the UK. So they're making a big effort to try and help their members have knowledge of what these changes mean. And it says here that the events will include live events and recordings, as we said there. March the 28th is a big day for our industry as the IET releases the eagerly awaited Second Amendment. That's from John O'Neill, the Technical Director of the NIC. And as with all updates to the wiring regulations, the detail is crucial, and they're absolutely committed to supporting their members stay abreast of these important changes. They're not going to speculate beforehand. Instead, they're focusing on delivering the facts as soon as they are confirmed. So yeah, that's really good that the NIC are stepping up there. And there's a link on that website where you can go off and find out about that if you are a member of the NIC or you want to get involved in their efforts to provide some CPD. In my opinion, is if you're doing something like that from somebody like the NIC or NAPIT, alongside already having an existing 18th edition qualification, that would be more than enough in terms of my belief. But obviously I don't make the rules on these things. Then there's Project 18, the Amendment 2 Roadshow from the ECA. The ECA historically have done some great things for their members around regulation changes. I know when the 18th edition came out, they provided free books and these roadshow events for their members, which is absolutely fantastic. So I'm not an ECA member, although I am in the process of taking the steps towards being one. But they're putting on some roadshows where they're going to unpack the major changes in the regs, and they're going to discuss and break down each part of that, exactly what's changed and what it means for your working practices and how it affects your business. And they're going to be joined by representatives from ICO and Signify, who are going to share their knowledge on the topics relating to the amendment, which is quite a big deal actually when you think that a lot of the changes are to do with fire. That's really nice that they've got some industry involvement there. So that's probably a good one if you are in the ECA to check out, and they make that freely available to every single employee of an ECA registered company. So really powerful. It's not just for the owners of the businesses that they put this on for, it is for everybody. And again, they go through what some of the anticipated changes are, and they make reference to that press release from the IET. And there's a link on the website where you can go and book your places. They've got ones on at Weybridge, Bristol, Leeds, Swansea, Manchester, London, Leicester. So they've got quite a wide coverage there for you to go and check that out. Although it seems to be lacking any dates up in Scotland, but I guess it's a little bit different up there anyway. So we've got that one. We've also got parts of free CPD from industry itself. So I've flagged up something here from Eton where they're going to do some CPD webinars again that's for free, talking about the changes in the Amendment 2. And I know, for example, Hager are doing the same, Electrium, Schneider, that all these big industry brands are going to put some events on as well. So it's really good to see that industry's stepping up to make some content available for everybody else to take in and understand what these changes are. And I would thoroughly expect, although I haven't seen for certain, that the guys and girls at EFIX will be doing something as well to help us all with knowledge in and around what's coming in Amendment 2. They're usually at the forefront of all of these big changes and getting content in their content output, if you like, that helps us as electricians. So keep an eye on that as well. And I apologise to the guys and girls at EFIX if I've missed you sharing that already. Obviously it's still only February. I'm sure as we get a bit nearer to the date you'll release exactly what it is you're going to be up to. But I would expect News at Pen and Regs Corner with Joe to be full of stuff around Amendment 2 in the very near future. Also here we've got the NIC, and this is more to do with paid courses. So you can do a top-up course if you like, which is a bit more official to perhaps the CPD we've been speaking about, and all of those CPD events from the NIC, NAPIT, the ECA, and some of these brands within the industry, they all come with CPD certification. So you will get a certificate of attendance from all of those things anyway to show that you've taken in some form of training. But if you want something a little bit more formal, the NIC do an Amendment 2 course, and whilst it's not the City and Guilds full 18th edition course, you will get a certificate of attendance, and it will have had classroom learning with access to a tutor, which I guess is different to what the webinars and roadshows are, which is maybe more their sales and training team speaking with people about the changes. This will actually involve a lecturer. And the same again with NAPIT. So they've got an Amendment 2 training event, which is virtual, so again different from the webinars. They've actually got their price on there at the minute, which is £87.50, and they go through a day on the course, and again it gives you access to a lecturer. It says that it's not a webinar, it is an interactive classroom experience, and that you get questions along the way to confirm your learning and a certificate based on the results of that. So whilst it's not the City and Guilds formal qualification, you can include that as an optional extra as well. So if you're wanting a bit more formal training, they've got a range of events on there, and they seem to be starting on around the 19th of April. So that's an option. And NAPIT also have their expo events. So these are really good again, and you don't have to be a NAPIT member to attend these. They've revamped their popular expo for the year, and they've got a CPD masterclass at 7 locations, and you also get a copy of the wiring regs included in this. So while the headline price might seem a bit steep, when you actually look at what you're getting, it's virtually for free. So you've got a one-stop shop for informing contractors of updates to the regulations which allow members in the wider industry to be aware of these types of developments. The expo events will begin with CPD awareness seminars covering the major changes to all parts of BS7671, including the new Part 8 for prosumer electrical installations. The sessions will be followed by Q&A with JPEL committee technical experts Frank Bertie, Paul Schiffers and Richard Townsend. The events will also host an exhibition with some of the industry's best tools and service manufacturers, including Mega, Hager, SPD, Chint, Garrow, ICO, Schneider Electric, Lucicia, Denmans and Kundis. On the day, participants will have the opportunity to review and purchase the new publications and certificates, as well as access additional training with NAPIT to ensure their business is future-proof for the new regulations. And they've got those throughout the year at various locations across the UK. Again, similar places actually to where the NIC are in their course. And it shows here what the event timetable is, so it goes through it there. It says that you get your free copy of the regs and some additional discounts. Now, as a member, it would cost you £80, and that includes VAT, and a non-member, it's £85, and again, it includes VAT. If you already have a copy of the wiring regulations, they will give you a credit for the same value of what the regulations are to spend on the day in the NAPIT web store. So if you've already got your book and you don't want another one, you do have that option. So they're quite useful events to go off and attend, and I often think it's good when it's people coming together from across the industry to talk about these things, because you get a wider view and certain areas of expertise. So if you've got Schneider, for example, and Hager, you've obviously got the distribution, circuit protection and accessories input onto those things. And then your technical standards, obviously you've got the team from NAPIT who can explain what they mean in detail, and you've got Mega there to talk about the testing. It's usually really, really good events. So if you are a NAPIT member, or even not, you can go off and enjoy that one as well. So let's just scoot that down again a second, and we'll make me back big in the screen. So it's just a quick run through of some of your options. Obviously there'll be people in the social media space sharing content on their YouTube videos to do with these changes. It's going to impact onto all of us. It's nothing to really be worried about or scared of. It's just a change in regulations, and from the looks of it, it's going to be more minor tweaks around the edges than anything too drastic, aside from the inclusion of that new prosumer section, which is going to be new material on all of us. So we can look forward with excitement to reading into that. It won't drastically affect your apprenticeship experience if you've already in that process anyway. And obviously if you've recently done your apprenticeship and you're fresh out into industry, taking some of this CPD and understanding what the changes are, it's just something you have to get used to doing. Every 2 or 3 years these cycles repeat. There's the investment in training and books, and we've had that cost just recently, where obviously we've got to upgrade the technical documentary reference in our work as electrical contractors. So there's that fun and games as well. And I'll make myself available for anybody who wants to discuss these things on a podcast or whatever else. I'm sure I'll be out there talking about this and giving my reaction to the document after I've read it. And as always, that will just be based on my interpretation and understanding, sharing my opinion of that as freely as possible, in the hope that it helps other people and ultimately improves my knowledge on these things. That's the best advice I can give anyone who is just starting to step into the world of understanding how the regs affect your day-to-day job. Speak with the people around you, speak with your colleagues out on site, speak with your mentors and employers, get involved in the discussions, don't sit quietly by, dive in there, have your say, and that's the best way to learn. Just talk about these things with the people around you. And otherwise, thank you all for watching this episode of the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast, if you have watched. And for those of you who have listened, I'll drop links in the description on the podcast so you can go off and find those web pages and have a read later on yourselves if you want to. Otherwise, until the next time, I will be back very soon. We have got some content coming on 2391, Test and Inspection, where we're going to speak about that in more depth and hopefully help people who are on that path to have a better chance of a successful outcome with that. And we're also going to speak a little bit about passing your apprenticeship NVQ portfolio. So this is beyond my technical knowledge, to do with one file and using things like that you'll all be familiar with. Obviously, I don't have access to or use that, so I'm going to bring some lecturers into the discussion and we're going to talk about all of that. But that's all to come. We are going to bring the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast back with a little bit more regular content, hopefully some things that are going to help you, and I'm sure I'll speak about Amendment 2 once it's out as well. Otherwise, catch you all on the next one. Take care, have a brilliant day, and see you soon.